Thank you, Tom. Well, let me get started by saying that this is really great, hosted by, of course, by Becky and Tom Garcia, so we should give them the thanks for having me come down for your benefit first and foremost. Thank you for arranging the time, the date, the location, the goodies, and there's a raffle apparently as well too. What else can you ask for? Jeez. How much more incentive in today's society of everything being like that, and being in a team society and having a short attention span, we have to basically do all this stuff. So what I'm going to do is I don't like to go on and on and on about stuff, so I'll keep this around 30 minutes, and if there's any questions, like I was saying at the beginning of class, that are pertinent to what we're talking about, I'll be happy to entertain them. But if they start going into some real tangent, like my cousin's brother's neighbor or something like that, then you guys are welcome to email me or call me, and I'll talk to you guys on the phone, or we'll email back and forth, and you're welcome to do that. All my information that's on here and the video, I promise to you, Becky, that I'll give it to my IT guy, and you guys can take a look at the video, download it, and look at it again at any time. And then the PowerPoint presentation and a new one that I have as well, so you guys can download, so you don't have to take notes. Today's more is just like sit back, relax, digest information. And what I'm going to do different from other attorneys is that I want to educate, but at the same time demystify a lot of stuff that people get told by their tias, meaning aunt in Spanish, or by their neighbors, or by their cuñadas, which means like sisters-in-laws, or neighbors. Because there's so much misconception, and people make this whole issue of estate planning more complicated than it needs to be. It's really a lot more simple than it is, and a lot of people should do it and talk about it more openly, but unfortunately I have two things going against me: procrastination, and unfortunately not knowing what it's about and how it benefits people. Knowledge is really important. Knowledge is very powerful. So hopefully, since this only has one little USB port, what I'll do is, as I go through the slides, forgive me because I'm not one of those boring people that just goes by slide, so I'll go back and forth and show you what I think is important at the time, because you guys can see this yourself. But just before I get started in class, just as a show of hands, how many of you folks here, just out of curiosity, have even set up your estate plan, which would be either a will or a trust? Has anybody even done that? Well, the camera holder and Becky holder. So good for you. That doesn't mean for those who have done nothing that is bad necessarily, because you're here and you're alive and you're in good health and you're conscious, so you can obviously remedy that very quickly. Did you guys know some statistics before I get started, that about 67 to 70% of people don't do any type of estate planning? And they unfortunately become, when they pass away, they die intestate or they become incapacitated, then we have to deal with the conservatorship. The next highest percentage would be, it's roughly between 15 and 20%, just do a simple will, a written will, or they go online on LegalZoom, or they go to the local Staples store, or wherever they can get those statutory forms. And a will is the next step, but it only gives direction to the court what your wishes are, and it just starts the process of court administration, so it really does this much more help. And then the last percentage are people who actually take the time and set up their complete estate plan, their trust, along with a pour-over will, with their health care directive and financial power of attorney. And we'll talk about those 4 documents in just a second. How many of you folks have parents and grandparents right now? Just as a sign. So if you guys aren't aware, right now it's a big transference of wealth between the World War II generation, what we call the Golden Era, to the baby boomer generation from 1946 to 1964. And then we have the next generation, Generation X, and then Y, and then so forth, and millennials. Everybody seems to be talking about that. So why is this important? It's because right now it's more important than ever, as these generations unfortunately live out their lives and their estates. Estate is such a obnoxious word. I think I usually call it my stuff. So instead of calling it estate, everybody kind of conjures up big ideas of super rich people and Lamborghinis and big homes and stuff like that. But an estate could just be simply the clothes on your back and the money in your pocket. It can be as simple as that, or it can be more complicated. So as the World War II generation transfers their estate to the baby boomer generation, they need to do the estate planning. They need to be prepared. And then now the baby boomer generation is also need to do their estate planning. They're also calling the baby boomer generation what they call the sandwich generation, because people, if you don't mind saying, like Becky and Tom, could be taking care of their mom and dad, and at the same time If their children are not doing as well, maybe they're back at home for a little bit until they get on their feet, and so they're sandwiched. Does this sound familiar?
Yes.
So, I mean, these statistics are really important, and that's why I'm currently very busy in my practice, because people are either from this generation, or the future generations. And you don't have to be older to do an estate planning, and there's really not, how would you say, not too early of an age where you need to do estate planning, because we had young couples coming in the generation X and the Y, where they're starting to have their families, starting to get their first homes, and they have little ones, and so they want to establish their estate plan so that if something, God forbid, happens to them, they have a guardianship clause in place where someone's going to raise the kids and pay for their education or their basic necessities out of their estate that they leave behind. So what I'm saying, my cross-section of my clients is very varied. It doesn't have to just be one end of the spectrum, it's the whole spectrum, just to give you perspective. And I suspect that you guys are all over the spectrum as well too, and that's why you're here.